Let's get this conversation going. We've got basically a little over 30 minutes, and let's make the most out of that. So we have a first question right there, sir.
Good
if you do me
morning.
a favor, by the way, identify yourself when you're asking your question. Okay.
Good morning. My name is Webb Adams. I'm with the U.S. Census Bureau. Courtney mentioned the topic of driverless cars. I'm just wondering, could this generate another round of sprawl? Say, for instance, okay, Hunterdon County, now you can just hop into your driverless car and commute to New York and maybe sleep all the way there. Do we foresee perhaps another incidence of sprawl happening with driverless cars?
I'm going to interject one moment, which is, by the way, based upon the traffic patterns on Route 78, you can pretty much sleep now, okay? With that, Courtney, try to top that one, okay?
Yeah, so actually, it's both the driverless cars and the telecommuting. I talking to the mayor, former mayor Vernon, he's very excited about bringing black fiber, and the fact that people aren't going to have to go to traditional offices means they're going to want to live in Vernon again. I think part of what might stymie that a little bit is that these further out places need to also recognize what the population wants. So they don't want a McMansion on a 2-acre lot and then self-drive into New York, for the most part. Again, the millennials, the baby boomers, and talking about Mitch, with you're going to have single-family households. We're not talking about McMansions on 2-acre lots. So if these areas decide to evolve and become mixed-use, walkable entertainment centers, that very well could be a possibility with telecommuting and self-driving cars, that you can live in Flemington, which is a great downtown, very walkable, and get yourself to New York in your self-driving car. And I think Mike wanted to add something to that.
Let me ask, I have actually the opposite viewpoint. I think this technology revolution that we're about to experience in transportation may actually promote mass transportation. And let me give you an example. Most people, you can figure out a way to make it to the Somerville train station, but you're not quite there yet to where you got to get to, which is these employment centers that surround downtown Somerville. We call it the last mile. How do you navigate the last mile? This may be the answer. So I would look at it as supporting, because right now people drive their cars because they can't figure out how to make that last connection, but there may be a technology solution that automatically picks you up as you're walking out the train station, boom, you're at the work in about 5 minutes.
And I want to jump on that real quickly as well, if I can. While we focus here at NJTP on transportation, we all understand that the transportation model is not months or short term. It is years in the making in terms of how we're going to fix the transportation issues. And certainly we are, many would say, behind the 8 ball in this one. The solution in so many cases is the utilization of technology. And when I look, and I hate to harp on Route 78, but the solution to Route 78, by the way, is not more lanes. The solution to 78 is a better management of volume moving onto that system so that you do actually manage it better. It is the integration of technology for that. It is the integration of technology. It is last mile commutes. It's how to get people to existing infrastructure and maximize that, okay? And it is the idea that in addition to the transportation segment, we've got to use technology from the standpoint of how are we going to make our offices more mobile, more destination-based. Bottom line is this: when we build places that people want to live now, and where the infrastructure exists, the jobs and the people will follow that. So let's plan that model accordingly. And those are things that we can accomplish, and when I say in years, not decades, but in short-term years. We can actually accomplish them, and they're very, very cost-effective. Next question, please.
Hi, Daniel Peterson, Dewberry, Northeast Manager, Transportation Planning. Following on this question of self-driving cars and the like, would not this actually be an opportunity for NJ Transit to be able to develop further out on their existing lines, that self-driving cars actually provide the means for not just first mile, but first and last 10 miles, so that our commute sheds actually become more transit focused? And then recognizing that maybe one day we'll all have subscriptions to one of maybe 10 different self-driving car companies, that actually the notion of carpooling, which never worked here because you never knew who else in your town actually was going to the same place where you worked or nearby, that because these providers know everything, that they actually will set up carpools for you in things that could not have happened previously in New Jersey could all of a sudden begin to happen?
From your lips to God's ears.
Let me, on this transportation issue, just interject, because I think something historic happened last week in New Jersey. The day before the legislative vote on the Transportation Trust Fund, there was a letter sent to each individual politician in Trenton on behalf of NJBIA, State Chamber, Business Partnership, Morris Chamber, Meadowlands, and Mid Central. And it started with this sentence: on behalf of 3 million employees that work in New Jersey, we, representing the employers, want you to raise our gas tax to fund transportation. That sentence had never been uttered before. So you now have business speaking with a common voice in a way that's never happened before to support transportation infrastructure investment. So if we respond with some of the things we're talking about, I think it's safe to assume that it would be embraced by the business community and lead the kind of boom that we're all looking to achieve here.
She had a question. Okay.
Hi, I'm Manju. I'm a CUNY graduate student. So I was observing that most of the conversations are strategic and issue-based, and my interest is in exploring how can these conversations happen in a more public setting or within the public, because I think that having a balance between strategic conversations and public or grassroots conversations is going to be key to have that awareness developed about this.
Somebody jump on that.
Actually, you should jump on it, Matt. You're the one that's leading the effort. And
I will jump on it because I think
Yeah.
I've started to address that a little bit already. And so within a very small region, and I'll go back to Hunterdon County for a moment, Tara Shepard, who's sitting right behind you, okay, Sue Desmera, our Director of Planning, myself, as far back as 2008, began to talk about what was happening with our economy. And Tara was one of the leaders who came to me one day and said, do you understand what's going on? And even at that point of almost 13 years of being elected today, almost 23 out there, no, it hadn't dawned on me, okay? I've talked about the fact that we had no alternative, that once we put the data together, which happened through our SEDS, and by the way, NJTPA is also taking all of the county SEDS and creating a regional SEDS, which gives us that blueprint in time to say, this is where you are, these are your issues, which deal with every one of these topics right here, and here are some suggestions on what to do. But you've hit the nail on the head with something. This is a culture change. It was a culture change in Raleigh, North Carolina. Dean Hughes will probably talk about it being a culture change in New Jersey. And the only way you change the culture is you must begin to put that message out there. And as I said earlier, you become the Kool-Aid drinker who then passes that cup to as many people as you can. And what we have finding in Hunterdon County is that as we're now through 16 or 17 municipalities, planning boards, governing bodies, okay, and then we're into the church groups, and we're, with the real estate groups, I mean, you name it. I mean, Wycott Realtors had us in to do this presentation. There is no group that is not getting it. They're not always sure what to do with it,
right.
But we've passed the mark of no. And we moved from where we had to fight to get people to let us come in and talk to where we now have a backlog of those who want us to come in and to share this information so that we can begin to develop this grassroots culture shift, okay? And with that culture shift comes the ability then to say, okay, within these action items, how do we do this, okay? So I'm standing here as living proof of the fact that you can survive politically. That is key. You can survive politically, because I will tell you that as far back as, in my second election in 2009, when I was talking about economic development, people looked at me like I had 3 heads. And in 12, they looked at me like I had 2. And in 15, the reaction was, well, why haven't you fixed it? Because why? They'd been through a recession, okay? And a recession in Hunterdon County, where I can tell you, having moved there in 1970, we'd been through recessions before, but the impact to our residents had never been what occurred in 08. Hunterdon County was bulletproof in many cases, okay? It wasn't in the 08 recession.
Right.
And so we finally have this culture change of where people are beginning to understand this. So I've gone longer than I should have. I'm going to ask you folks to comment as well, okay?
Can I just add too, I want to just jump in, because for our Plan 2045, the reason we're here today, we've been really working towards and trying to mine some innovative ways to get out to engage the public. And Matt hits it on the head. The idea is you don't, I mean, this is a meeting, and I'm glad you all made it. But we more often than not need to bring our message someplace else, not expect folks to come, and Mitch mentioned that too. The next generation doesn't come to meetings. You have to find ways to engage them. So we've been working with VTC, and John Carnegie and I ran some studio classes trying to find out what to do. We've got a whole innovative outreach plan that's being put together. I think Dave Barron is around here somewhere, and Ted Ritter are working on that right now. We're working with all the subregions, asking them, how do we reach your subregion? Because what works maybe in Hunterdon isn't going to be the same thing that works in Hudson, as linked as they are. You know, what is the best way to do that? And I think if any of the panelists could just respond with like something that we could learn, that something else we could do. How do we reach people? How do we engage people? And how do we get meaningful input from those processes too? So that's all things we're grappling with, but certainly, you know, think we're going to take leaps and bounds from maybe what our plan was 10 years ago to hopefully what our plan is for 2045. So.
I'll respond to that, Mary, and thank you for those comments. But I'll tell you an example of something that we're working on right now, which is called the Scenic Wild Delaware River Geotourism Project. This project is a 9-county project in 3 states, Sussex and Warren County, in the state of New Jersey, 4 counties in New York, and whatever's left, 3 counties in Pennsylvania. We've been at this, and we've launched an incredible website, and have had some 600 plus businesses in this 9-county region which have jumped onto this website as a way to advertise the vitality of the region around the Delaware River. But what we are experiencing right now is a lack of communication to the actual counties, to the community members of these actual counties that can be serviced by this extraordinary project. It's a massive tourism draw. And something Matt and I talk about often in these kinds of meetings is that what is good for the western part of this state is good for the eastern part of this state, and we can't have one without the other. So we grappled with this question just last week, and what we decided to do was to focus our marketing efforts and our limited marketing dollars on social media. We cannot underestimate the power of social media in communicating, particularly with the next generations. They do go on, they do follow it, they do respond to it. So that's where our focus is right now, because it costs us virtually nothing to do that. And we are sharing this good news with our community. Ultimately, it will get out to the rest of our state, to New York, and to Pennsylvania.
Next question. David? We also have one over here, by the way.
Hello, my name is Len Resto, and I'm president of the New Jersey Association of Rail Passengers, also a councilman in Chatham Borough. Excellent presentations. My question, I guess, is addressed to Linda, and it has to do with climate change. Our rail association had an annual meeting on September 17th. We had a meteorologist give us a presentation on climate change, where he said that by the year 2045, coincidentally enough, that the climate would be such that at high tide, low-lying areas of Hoboken and Jersey City would flood. And so unless Hoboken and Jersey City took measures to control floods, you would have Hoboken Terminal underwater. So does the NJTPA take that into consideration and work with the cities to urge that, flood control, or how do you handle that?
Well, let me address it from the NJTPA standpoint very quickly. Actually, if you went back to the last plan, 2040, okay, and actually I think as far back as the Plan 2035, the issue of looking at our infrastructure, our transportation infrastructure especially, with regard to changes in the climate and how it would impact has been part of that plan now for almost 10 years, I think, so to speak. Okay, so that as you're looking forward, when you're looking at what are we going to be developing, what's going to be occurring, you're factoring that in to say, okay, and by the way, it's not just Hoboken. The reality of it is that it's things like the tunnels, it is things like the airports that exist, what will the runway surfaces be, where are the water levels? It's a conversation that's built not necessarily around, and no disrespect to anybody, it's not a conversation necessarily about why, although that's a separate conversation. The issue is, if it's truly occurring, the why and how to deal with it's one thing, the reality is the other thing, and how do we deal with that on that side of it thing. So actually resiliency, why don't you tackle it from
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, so that's one of the issues that this task force is going to be addressing too, and the water will definitely be there by 2045. And the numbers keep changing, but unfortunately they keep increasing. So, and in fact, NJTPA did the risk and vulnerability assessment, 2010 or about 6 years ago or so, and the numbers have changed since that original risk assessment. So we need to stay on top of it. But yes, definitely, those type of figures will be incorporated into any type of infrastructure improvements. Yeah.
And I would just add that with the reality of it, also the recovery from it is going to play a role in how quickly can we rebound. You know, we maybe might have to accept that we're going to have a certain number of events or certain issues, but what's the resilient component that we can plan for that helps us rebound more quickly? Question over there.
Hello, my name's Akash. I'm a college student, but one of the questions, I had a comment regarding a statement you made. You said that self-driving cars would cause an increase in traffic, and not only traffic, but energy consumption. I'm guessing you meant by gasoline and other gasoline product consumptions, but wouldn't you agree if a car is self-driving, as a computer science major, you're trained to be self-efficient and reliable, and if I'm programming a car that's self-driving, it would also be electrical, because I understand that gasoline isn't going to last forever, and electricity would be better because the sun's going to be there a lot longer than I am.
That's a good point.
Oh. Certainly hope so. I'm working on it, by the way.
Yeah, I think my concern was not ultimately if every car that was on the road today was replaced with a self-driving car, we would be more efficient. My concern is that because we're more efficient, more people would decide to drive cars than are currently on the road today. So, I don't know how many cars we have, and then you lose that efficiency. It's a regressive model. So that's the only thing. So yes, the cars will be more efficient, and certainly you will be driving fewer vehicle miles per trip as it stands today. And that's the only concern. But I like to get back to the thinking about policy and infrastructure investments is getting on it now to think about its marketing and it's the investments that make use of our existing transit, and the self-driving cars are the first mile and the last mile to and from that transit. But we have to make sure that the transit is efficient and we don't have tunnels that go down before you have new tunnels built, and everything is done on that end too, to make people want to take the transit instead of the car the entire drive. But you're right.
And we know and that's why we're here, right? The reason why we're going to make sure that regionally the technology revolution that we know is happening in transportation is used to support mass transportation and not more sprawl is because that's what we decided. And that's what is going to be in our plan. And that's how we're going to make all our transportation investment decisions. So anyone who doesn't think that this is important, I mean, this is what it's all about, right? So it's going to happen that way.
Okay, good morning. Robert Sobel from Brinkerhoff Environmental Services in Monmouth County. The development of multifamily apartment buildings, Jersey City, are, from what I see, for young people, millennials, traveling out of New Jersey into New York City to work. But I'd like to address what Mr. Silver mentioned about the redevelopment of the suburban office parks, some of the pharmaceutical giants that have left their parks, and one in particular in Monmouth County that my good friend Jim Hughes might talk about is the former Bell Labs facility, a 2 million square foot building in complex, I should say, in Homedale, New Jersey, which is now rapidly filling up with tenants. And eventually it will house about, or will employ several thousand tenants. So it's a transportation question. Is anybody in, or any townships that you know of with these big empty developments, suburban developments, planning for the future when they will be repositioned and eventually employ thousands of employees? How will they get to those jobs?
So that's actually a great example. We had a similar situation in Somerset County where something extraordinary happened, where a pharmaceutical company left, abandoned 1 million square feet and went to Massachusetts, of all places. That was never supposed to happen. I thought there was a rule in New Jersey that you were never supposed to leave Somerset County, so that was the wake-up call. So it was an open question back in 2009 whether or not these stranded office complexes could be reinvented. Everyone was very skeptical. The great news is the answer is yes, they can. We give credit to Bridgewater Township for having the courage to re-examine, with the support of Somerset County, to allow mixed use, hotel, hopefully an Irish pub, a food store, some service establishments, and several hundred housing units. Now, how do we know that this has been successful? Simple. Nestle, the world's largest manufacturer of food, wanted to research the connection between nutrition and health. And after searching the whole world for 2 years, they picked that site where that pharmaceutical company had left 5 years before the goat of Cambridge. Doesn't get better than that. So yes, it shows that working together regionally to come up with these strategies can be effective. Now, to answer your transportation question, still working on it.
Just want to add one thing about transportation, and it's not just these professional office jobs. It's also, and we see it a lot, and kind of give you an example, the warehousing jobs and the industrial jobs, particularly the warehousing, which have all lined up and down the turnpike, nowhere near their employee base. And so from a public transportation standpoint, these are lower income jobs, so people who might not necessarily have the car or the money to fill the gas tank, especially after the gas tax raise. We need to be working on the transportation for second shift and low income workers. Yep. A great example, Greater Mercer TMA worked with Amazon to set up a shuttle from, and I forget the name of, there's like a wonderful strip mall complex that the bus goes to, but no bus goes to the Amazon complex. And so the TMA worked with New Jersey Transit, worked with Amazon, who's actually partially funding it, to get the workers that last mile from that New Jersey Transit stop to the place where they need to be. So now you can have a greater draw. You can be pulling people out of Trenton to get them over to, I think that's West Windsor or something over there. And that's also what we have to be planning for and thinking about, not just getting the professionals to their jobs, but getting everybody to their jobs.
And I will add one more statement to that. I think one of the reasons, when we look at Monmouth County in particular, one of the reasons that this new development was able to take place is because the livability quotient in Monmouth County is growing by leaps and bounds. Right. Also, I believe in Homedale, correct me if I'm wrong, Memorial Sloan Kettering is establishing a strong presence there as well. And one of the reasons that one of the main reasons that the livability quotient has risen so significantly in Monmouth County is because of the Monmouth County Arts Corridor. Monmouth County Arts Corridor is a connection, an extraordinary regional cooperative marketing connection of all of the arts and cultural offerings that exist within a radius of a train stop, because the shore The shore train goes to Monmouth County, and New Jersey Transit has been an extraordinary partner in helping to promote and market this Monmouth County Arts Corridor. It was initially initiated by the Monmouth County Arts Council, but it is now that entire focus has been added to the Monmouth County plan, that whole arts and culture corridor piece.
We struggle, so I'll move one more place. We struggle in Hunterdon County with one, Merck.
Right.
Okay? 3,000 employees, and one day Merck says, hey, we're out of here in a few years. The economic impact has not even been felt at this moment, and the first round of economic impact took what could have been about a 3% assessed valuation increase down to about 0.4%, and that was only in year one, okay? And so you look at a site like Merck, which at one point was state-of-the-art, 1 million square feet, and say, what do we do with this? And what has to happen with that, and it's certainly a challenge within Reddington Township, is looking at that from a multi-mixed-use facility that actually can attract for lots and lots of different reasons, okay? I'll add something, and I'm gonna sort of play off of something that Mitchell said, okay? We look at two generations of people. We look at baby boomers and we look at millennials. And I know there's a great focus on millennials. We gotta get millennials where they need to be. We also need to keep baby boomers where they are. Okay? When you look at those two combined populations, you look at between 50 and 60% of the populations. And you often say, what do these two generations have in common? Because in most cases, you think they don't. 3 A's, affordability, accessibility, and amenities.
Yep.
And that falls smack dab into the world of mixed use. In a county like Hunterdon, rural as it is, our focus is not, as I've said, about how do we build more McMansions. Our focus is our downtown centers, Hunterdon style. How do we do that? To your point right there, second row, typing on your phone, okay? It's a culture change, okay? We have to we got to take about 10 municipalities and get their mindset to understand that development doesn't mean bad things. It's economically driven and has to happen. Anyway, next question. I'm sorry, Mitchell. We're gonna give him the mic for sure.
I mentioned in my presentation, we did our long-range transportation plan. We took a unique approach. Now, it was a smaller area, and looked at all the future land use plans, all the municipalities, because that told us what the demand would be for residential and commercial and all the employment centers. So my first question is, I know there's a lot of municipalities within all those counties. Was that something you're looking at? Because that's telling you what each township is saying they expect their growth to be, and tie that to the long-range transportation plan. Because what we found, if you looked at one of those slides, the reason why those growth centers work, we changed our zoning to allow not just office parks, but shopping centers to be repositioned. And we allow density on parking lots, they can reposition it. Right. And those became the places where both empty nesters and millennials moved. People were worried about increased traffic and actually went down, because now people were walking across the street for restaurants, for shopping, for all their services, and the empty nesters loved it. So it created what we thought was a shopping center forever, introduced mixed use. So my question is, and that helped in our region rethink the long-range transportation plan, because we knew they wouldn't be driving to all those employment centers. Each one of those nodes became an employment center. Are you looking at the future land use plans of municipality so you understand collectively what the trends, because they may be going in the wrong direction, where you have to ask some of these municipalities to rethink their future land use plan because it's too much status quo and doesn't allow for any growth, just keeping what they have the same?
Yeah, and that's exactly the point. That I had a canned question about home rule, and right now I think. There's reality and there's what's planned for some of these municipalities. Some still think they're going to get a big office park out on Route 78 when you have office parks that are emptying. So for TPA, I think they have to plan in reality despite all these local plans, and we actually need the reverse. So the Regional Plan Association, my former employer, is actually working on realistic projections and where the growth could occur based on what we're talking about, based on what you did. And now it's actually getting, and talking about infill in the corridors, talking about more going to Newark and Jersey City and even Patterson's, going back to our traditional cities. But that then requires those municipalities, which the TPA has no authority to have them change their zoning, to go ahead and do it. And so I hope and I think it's going to be continued education. I think people are going to see, hey, Jersey City is booming, Westfield is booming, Cranberry is booming, because they changed their zoning to meet the demand. And so it's a little chicken and the egg here.
And there's a lot of work we can do in terms of, and I like what Mike had said, he's working with all the municipalities, and if they didn't want to work with you, skipped over we are working with New Jersey Transit with their Vivian's program and NJDOT on, working with communities who want to learn more about transit-oriented development, transit-supportive development. How do we kind of make sure everyone understands it's not a one-size-fits-all? But, I mean, the poster child for what you're saying is Somerset County and the work that they've done in working with every single community. We're not there yet, but I think it's certainly an aspiration for NJTPA and for our subregions.
So some towns said, we don't want to be considered, some said yes. Then the question was asked, what sites do you want us to take a look at? It ranged from the Bedminster, AT&T complex in Bedminster to Washington Avenue in Greenbrook. And basically recognizing towns needed help and rethinking how to make these places great that is based on reality and based on what the market is looking for. So that's where the county planning board, I give them a lot of credit. How many sites did you pick, Walter? Like 16, I think? 16, right. Sites scattered throughout the county as to where the county is providing the support to the towns to rethink these sites and how to make them competitive in today's world. And only for those who want to do it. And that seems to be working.
Mike, I'm going to add to that. Education, removing a fear factor.
Yes.
So that towns can make intelligent decisions on what is best for them and at the same time best for the region.